Life Audio.
Today on Talk About That, John thinks the Olympic Steeplechase is unnecessarily dangerous and ponders getting our old band back together as a vanity project cash grab. Meanwhile, I explain why beefs between rappers are adorable and why learning about old political scandals actually comforts me. Plus, a conversation about a faith in God that depends on an outcome versus one that starts with a trust in His nature towards us. Today's episode is not sponsored by A1 Vacuum Repair. We work with dirt bags. But first, a word from our actual sponsor.
Guys, pull up a chair. Engage your mind. Let's talk about that. Johnny.
Free your mind.
Free your mind and Johnny, the rest.
We'll follow it. I think that was the philosopher en vogue.
On Vogue.
I wonder who originally somebody said something like that.
No, I think
Free your
it
mind.
was just them.
No?
Yeah. Did you like En Vogue?
Aristotle? They had a moment, didn't they? They had a little moment in the 90s.
You're not answering the question, though, are you?
I think, yeah.
Or you're afraid to say yes because you were a child in the 90s.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the other songs they had that were hits, though. What was the other En Vogue?
Giving him something he can feel.
That was like the more R&B swing kind of a thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Free your mind, the rest will follow.
There was a couple more.
Wasn't there one more?
There was one more that was like a big hit. But yeah, it was a very, Curry watches these reality shows with these, whatever housewives and stuff. And on one of them, I don't know what it is. She's going to yell. She's yelling right now. But I was like, who is this? And she goes, oh, she was in SWV in the 90s. And then this other one was in this group called Escape. And they're all like putting a tour together and they hate each other, but they're putting a tour together. And it's like, cruise and a thing. And people people still go to shows for SWV. They had that song Weak in the 90s, remember? I get so weak.
Yeah.
That was SWV. So evidently, like, those people are still out there, and they're still kind of like, remember when I was a thing? And they're like still, now they have other business enterprises.
It's like Girls 5 Eva.
It is, it's Girls 5 Eva.
Yeah.
Girls 5 Eva? That's
Goals. That's
a different. Yeah. But yeah, so, I don't know. That's us. Listen, we could put the band back together.
Listen.
See if we can't achieve some of the same heights that we...
I would like to know if we could maybe surpass the heights.
You think?
Just a little bit.
I wonder if I launched a side project now with, like, I have a little bit of I don't want to say I have a fan base, but I have people who follow my comedy. So if I was to say, like, hey, I've started playing music in a band, I wonder if people would be like, look at this. Because people do, like, a clip of mine went viral this week that is, like, 10 years old.
Huh.
Well, not 10, it's about 8 years old.
Did they repost it, or was it?
No, my social media firm posted it, and it was of me doing a parody of Kings of Leon, a song I'd wrote called Reduce My Body. It's to use somebody, the tune of that. And so, anyway, people were like, this guy's voice, you should go on and I was like, where were you 8 years ago when I recorded this?
Right.
Or
where were you 20 years ago?
20 years ago when I was in a band.
When we were trying to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's just funny. So I wonder because people are like, you should do real music. And I was like, I wonder if I really did now, if I could like get these people. It's like, or if people just go, this is a vanity project. Let him get it out of his system.
You know what?
Because like Keanu Reeves is in a band. You know what I'm saying? He's had a band for years called Dog Star. Did you know that?
No.
Exactly.
Dog Star.
Like
part of the deal is the
Johnny
name.
Depp plays guitar and sings, but like that's not what we want Johnny Depp to do.
No. I want Johnny Depp to be in those weird perfume commercials. That's what I want.
That's his true essence.
He does play a guitar in the desert with a wolf or something, so that would make sense. I mean, the commercial makes no sense, but that.
What
would
if
make
I
sense.
told you that wolf was him?
I think that was sort of the idea.
Yeah, it's a spirit guide.
Johnny, in a word, I hear what you're saying,
yes.
And the answer is yes.
I need you to sign here. You're going to give up 90% of the rights.
I'm down.
To your songs.
That's fine.
Yeah.
If you want my songs, I wonder, sometimes I do think about, I haven't written.
That's what I was going to ask you. When's the last time you sat down and wrote a song? You just got it out of your system, I guess. It's
been a while. Like for years there, I still would write.
Yeah.
Songs.
You could do it.
I'd say I wrote one maybe 2 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing that anyone ever heard. Like it's just something just me writing.
Okay.
I have a bunch of stuff in my OneNote files.
Yeah.
and I have these little voice memos where I'll get a melody in my head or something still. But I have gotten so busy writing other things that I did kind of. I was supposed to write with Caleb, our friend Caleb Edwards,
Right.
and I had to apologize the other day. I was like, "I'm sorry, we never did that."
And he was like, "You saved me a weekend."
He's like, "Thank you, yeah," because he's actually a really amazing songwriter.
Yeah.
Which his new record is really great. Have you listened to it?
I haven't yet. I need to.
Yeah.
I hate that I missed his show. Caleb Christopher Edwards, our dear
guys,
friend.
check out Caleb Christopher Edwards.
He's great.
And go listen to his new album. It's basically him and an acoustic, but it's really, really like well done. So you like it.
Nashville, man, it's a bustling metropolis of creatives.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Listen, are there negatives? Yes.
Yeah.
And are there positives? Yes. And are there things that are neither one? Probably.
Maybe.
Is this show one of them?
Is ambiguity
Perhaps.
a thing? Maybe.
Do I ask questions and then answer them? Sometimes.
I don't know.
I've noticed that that's a thing that, like, I think pastors perfected that. Like when I see a TED Talk speaker doing the whole thing of like asking a question then answering it, I go, you stole that from childhood pastors that I had. Like you know what I'm saying? That's a very pastor thing to do.
You think so?
Well, even Paul did it. Well, if grace abounds, should we all sin all the more? Heavens no. Like that's if Paul was a Southern gospel preacher.
That was a dead on quote from.
That's Paul.
Yeah.
That's my impression of Paul. If he were here.
You
know what I'm saying, though? So Paul would ask questions and then answer the question because he knew he was writing a letter. That's different. But when you're speaking and you're doing that.
I do it in books sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'll go back sometimes and edit it out. But I'll be like, and that's why this and that. Or I'll go make a statement and I'll go, why? Because, and then I'll go, that is kind of like, it's very sermon-esque. You're right. And I'll go, okay, I'm going to take the why out. And just kind of make this a statement.
There was that meme video that was forever ago of that Baptist preacher going, why? It took all the whys in his sermon and put them all together. Why? It was so great.
It
was like on Vine, just a looping guy asking why.
Maybe that's why in writing that I tend to over-disclaim.
Yeah.
Because I'm always anticipating, because as a speaker, I do that. I try to anticipate all the things.
You're anticipating how
you could get this wrong or what I could do, how could be misunderstood. You know?
Right. Or somebody could have some kind of other point, a counterpoint, and you're trying to anticipate their counterpoint.
Right, because they don't get to talk to me in the message. Yeah. And so it's like I'm talking for all of us.
Do you think that you would be doing that if you hadn't grown up reading Paul's letters? Do you think that some of that's Paul's... It's a Pauline way to
It probably
write.
is, because I really do. It's funny. My therapist will say...
Not a Paula Dean way to write. That's different.
A whole
That's when you
different
just
thing.
talk about butter a lot.
It's, by the way, the only person that hasn't hung out with Snoop Dogg at the Olympics, I think, is Paula Dean. Like everyone else now.
Dude, Snoop Dogg has completely reinvented himself. It's wild.
Like, I wonder
if you had told me, like, when Death Row Records was a thing, and he was like a scary gangster rapper.
Yeah.
That he would be someone who, if you saw him sitting next to your mother at the Olympics with his silly glasses, that a smile would come across your face and you would be filled with delight.
Look at that guy.
Look at that adorable person.
It's interesting, too, because I know with the whole Sean Diddy Combs thing that's come out, and he's like, completely apparently there's awful things. I haven't watched it all, but awful things.
Right.
I do wonder sometimes, I'm like, I hope you guys have background checked everybody that you're doing this with. Because there's a long history. Like, this is not a person who's just new to this, know. But I'm not saying anything about Snoop. Maybe there's hopefully nothing there. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, he did have a murder charge that he beat, but.
I'm saying, this is not a. It's not a.
And then wrote a record called Murder Was the Case That They Gave Me. That's art imitating life right there, John. It is. It's a reflection. Yeah. Is what it is. Yeah, when I was writing music, it was never about my murder charges. No. I mean, I left those in my past. I didn't want to bring that into it, I do wonder if I would rhyme as much if I wrote. Yeah. I don't want to rhyme as much. I think what's funny about, somebody pointed this out the other day, I saw a comedian talk about it. He was like, rap is considered the most it's the most bravado. Yeah. It's the most you're just going to cuss a guy out or whatever. You're going to like just tear a guy down to the studs, basically, just tear him new ones. So, but the thing about rap is that it's also the most sensitive medium, because it's like, I really hate this guy. He hates me. Let's go to our respective houses and write poetry about each other.
That's true.
It really is what a rap beef is.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it escalates. There have been evidences of those things where it escalates into violence. But for the most part, there's this weird rule of law that's respected where it's like, Eminem doesn't like this guy. I'm just going to write some poetry about him and embarrass him in public.
Yeah.
And then he's going to write a poem about me.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's very evolved. It's very evolved, honestly.
Yeah. It's very Shakespearean.
Yeah, or like, didn't you say that happened with Hamilton or whatever, like where they, or not, maybe Jefferson he bought the newspaper so he could like print stories about the opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists, it was the Anti-Federalists became the Republicans, which is not what we think of as Republicans today, but yes, they absolutely like would use the press. I mean,
I'm glad nobody's doing that now.
I'll tell you.
I'm glad nobody has like deeply entrenched political ideologies in all of their press.
Polemics is such a like part though of American history in a way I think we don't understand. Like there's this attack.
I think it's very comforting to start having the thoughts that it's been super bad before and we made it through it. Like I'm listening to a ton of like audio documentaries now about political scandals. And you just realize how far back, like the very first political scandal in America that we know of president that went all the way to the top was what's called the Teapot Dome scandal. Yeah. Do you know about Teapot Dome? Yeah. So I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, go listen to it. It's American Scandal, Teapot Dome. And Teapot Dome was this set of, it was basically, Teapot Dome is a big rock formation in Montana, I think, or Wyoming. But anyway, there's oil everywhere. And basically these oil reserves were owned by the government, and President Harrison.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was Harrison. So I think it was Harrison. He basically was just this pawn. He basically got into office and like immediately started appointing these guys to just like give favors to, political favors to. He was so corrupt.
Yeah.
And a drunk and all this stuff. And his Secretary of State, I think it was, basically sold without any other bidding, just started selling these oil fields contracts to oil companies that were his buddies.
Yeah.
And profiting off of like preserved lands that had been set aside. And basically they were set aside because we needed the oil for our military reserves, because we were getting ready. It's World War I, so on the heels of that. So it's like, we need this oil.
Okay, it can't be Harrison if it's World War I.
Well, maybe it was coming off of World War I. But anyway, because it was basically, who was Coolidge? Coolidge was right after, right? Because Harrison died in office, right?
You're thinking of Harding.
Harding, not Harrison.
Well, yeah.
Harding. So it was President Harding.
There you go.
So all that said, knowing a scandal, and then as they started unraveling it in the press, and then there was all these huge trials and everything, I just go, this was the 1920s.
Yeah.
Like the idea that we've gone on to be a country, we're still a country 100 years later. I mean, I would listen to one about Spiro Agnew, who was one of the most corrupt politicians we've ever had. And he was literally should have been president because Nixon stepped down. But it was just that Agnew got caught doing what he did, which was basically he was still taking payola from when he was governor in Maryland. They were bringing like envelopes of cash to the office of the vice president from like dirty deeds. He was still getting paybacks from construction deals and kickbacks. They're like, here you go. Make sure the vice president gets this. It was an envelope of cash. He would have been the president, except for he got caught doing that, and they had to like run him out of office right at the exact same time that Nixon. Yeah. So that's why it went to Ford, who then pardoned Nixon.
Yeah.
Which that's on This Week in History this week, by the way.
Really?
Because that all happened this week.
Yeah.
We'll get there. But anyway, that stuff should make me feel bad. It makes me feel better because it makes me go like, oh, we've had like rogues and we've had a lot go wrong. We've had a civil war. We've had stuff. It makes you go, not that we're bulletproof, but that we're resilient, we hope.
I like that.
Right?
I like that. You know what else makes us feel better, Jonnie?
What's that?
Listening to our sponsors.
Does it, though? Commerce makes us feel better.
I want to come back to this, though. So let's take a moment, though, and hear a word from a few of our partners.
Okay.
I don't really know if they're partners or not, Jonnie.
Well, they are whether they like it or not.
No, I just called them out. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a strong word. No, I actually, as a history guy, I say that all the time. I take such comfort in the difficulty of the past because it reminds me we've been here before in some form or fashion. Like the stock market's just taken a major dive.
Yeah.
It's a major sell-off, right?
Right.
And I'll hear them say, oh, this was like the great sell-off of 1987. And you know what? No one remembers that except the historians kind of thing. But that, if you can go back obviously to 2008, you can go back to 2022. And you can go back all through history and see that, okay, these are trends. Most people only know Great Depression, right?
Right.
That's the thing.
But I do remember Black Monday. I remember hearing about Black Monday because it was 87, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about it. I was a kid, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, my family was not like all of our stocks, what will we do? We weren't that kind of family. Right. But I remember it on the news and people were like freaking out for sure.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. There's just something about, and of course, Civil War. It also then bothers me that the bothering side is like, and there's some rhetoric right now among. Obviously, it's a hypercharged political year, right? Mm-hmm. Not that every year is not hypercharged politically in the United States now, but there has been some statements such as, we need a second American Revolution, and if they'll let us, we'd like for it to be bloodless. But they're indicating, but maybe it won't be, and we're willing to do that.
Yeah.
And you go, that's when I would go, honoring history would be helpful right now, because if you really would think back to what that has meant in American history.
Yeah, you're forgetting. You're romanticizing war at this point, which is a silly thing to do.
I wanted to write, and again, this is not a political statement, Johnny. It's just a thought for me a lot as a pastor. But I thought about writing a blog or an article maybe for Christianity.com, one of those that I write for, called something like Angry Armed Christians. Mm-hmm. Because those words shouldn't go together. You know what I'm saying? In theory, I mean, there's a reason to be angry, but I just thought it's such an interesting thing to go, if you go back to history again, what happens in history when Christians are angry and armed? I mean, crusades or other things, right? I mean, and I'm not saying there's not context or backdrop or other things, or there's not ever a reason to take up arms. I'm not saying any of those things. I just think it's an interesting time, and then I think you're right. We can take both comfort and warning from history to just say, hey, guys, let's we are resilient. We can do this, and also let's not repeat the worst parts of what we've done before.
I was thinking last night, do you think I know it's not, but I'd never thought about it before. Do you think it's a coincidence that they put the Olympics the same year as an election year? Now, we don't set the Olympic years, but it is interesting that that's the same year as our election year every time.
Yeah.
So we've had an election.
And a leap year, by the way.
And it makes us kind of, I don't want to say it's jingoistic, because that's a little bit of I don't want to be pejorative about it. Like, it's not a negative. I think there's something about the Olympics that's so special. But I don't find myself only rooting for the U.S. I root for a story. If I see some, like St. Lucia came back and beat us in some foot race, and passed the U.S. person, and they won their first medal ever.
Wow!
And I thought it was an amazing story.
Yeah.
And I was like beaming for that person.
Yeah.
So it's not always just like USA all the way. It's like, I want to hear the great story. But it is interesting that it's an election year, and maybe I guess it can't be planned because we're not the Olympic Committee. They don't care about our election years. But I'm saying it is interesting that it always falls on an election year, so we're always kind of getting that a little bit of a unity. We're coming off a little bit of a unifying event.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot.
I have too.
I mean, something about this year for me is maybe it's because we didn't have, the last one was very coming off of COVID and stuff.
Right, they had to put it to 2021.
Right.
And then all the banners still said 2020, and so it's a really trippy thing to watch.
And people were still wearing masks and other things. And I know there's a COVID resurgence. I got COVID last week, by the way. If you guys heard me sick on the air, it's one of the reasons we're a little late this week.
Yeah.
Because it's the first day I've not just coughed,
Don't jinx it, John.
I did it as I said it.
You can't say profusely. That triggers it.
But, I think it's interesting. I don't think it's any sort of alignment on purpose, but it is interesting that, yes, we have a moment to kind of think about, number one, something bigger than just ourselves, right? The world is a big place. Which, by the way, have you watched the rock climbing
They're racing up this
They're
wall.
racing up the wall.
It's wild.
They're up there in 6 seconds, and they're beating each other by like 0.01.
They got to tap the little square.
I was thinking, are they just pulling them up by the...
It's like Ninja Warrior.
But it was so fast. It's like, it was insane.
Yeah, it's crazy good.
And then, by the way, I also didn't know what this was, because I've watched a lot of the track and field this time.
Mm-hmm.
The steeplechase.
Right.
Okay, I know that's a horse race thing, but
right.
I didn't... When I saw it, I was like, okay, steeplechase.
You run a long time, then you jump this gigantic hurdle, and then you jump over a hurdle into water. Yeah. With your tennis shoes.
People on a track jump a hurdle into water.
A pool.
Yeah.
Basically, a baby pool.
I was like, I don't know, let's just throw some blisters on this.
Yeah,
it's like
wild.
we're just trying to make it, and it's a long race.
There was a guy that tripped on one of the hurdles the steeplechase last night, and they took him to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
He fell like right on his shoulder, and a bunch of guys, I mean, it's lucky it didn't cause like a massive pileup.
Yeah.
They were able to avoid him, but
yeah,
not good.
Anyway,
Steeplechase.
I mean, interesting. Yeah. I've seen a lot of interesting things.
Steve Taylor used to have a song called Steeplechase in the 80s, Christian artist, and it was about church hoppers. It's a steeplechase.
See, guys, what they're doing.
Come on now.
Yeah,
now a lot of churches don't have steeples. I don't know if you could even...
It's true. What would you call it today?
I don't know.
Coffee shop chase.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what it... Yeah. Hey, John, I think it's about that time.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think it's time for me to talk about the quote of the week.
Okay.
They talked about that. Yeah, I wasn't sure what I could pull off.
You don't want to
today.
go low there?
Yeah. Well, not like last week.
Oh, man, that was some James Earl Jones stuff.
The basement, yeah. Henry Nouwen today.
Okay.
Also known as Henri. Okay.
So talk about then is talking about Nouwen.
Hey,
now.
Hey, Nouwen. All right.
Now and then.
Yeah, that's what we should call it. Every week's a Nouwen quote. I really like this one.
Yeah.
When Jesus talks about faith, he means, first of all, to trust unreservedly that you are loved so that you can abandon every false way of obtaining it.
Yeah.
When Jesus talks about faith, he means, first of all, to trust unreservedly that you are loved so that you can abandon every false way of obtaining it. Faith, we grew up in kind of charismatic Pentecostal circles. And so like my grandfather was a faith preacher.
Yeah.
He would have called himself that. And, he died a few years back in his 90s. And even at the end, when I was talking to him, he would say, the most important thing that people are missing today is faith. Like faith was always his thing. But what he meant by that usually from his generation and from his, experiences was faith to believe for an outcome, right? For a miracle, for a healing, for a something. So it's interesting because I think you and I both have continued to just walk in, it's interesting because your job takes you to all manner of churches, right?
Right.
And my job takes me to all manner of churches as well in terms of writing for people in different, traditions and different places. And I think this has been one of those, I wouldn't call it evolutions, one of those really interesting sort of intersections is what faith means to different people on the Christian, ideological spectrum. And I think coming to a place, I think this is a great definition where you realize, okay, faith is not just about me believing for an outcome of a specific situation. Right. But it is about believing in the nature of God towards me. Yeah. That's really where I'll talk to the church about that sometimes, like the God's nature, not just his nature in general, but then God's nature towards us or towards me in particular, if I want it to be a personal faith, is where that has to begin. Because I'll never then believe for an outcome if I don't believe God is one right who is desiring good things for me. And I think it's actually the hardest faith to have, right? To believe that you are loved so that you can abandon all the false ways you're trying to fill that hole. Mm-hmm. And so you can't hold the two things at once, right? So you're going to have to let go of something, and whatever those things are, that's the Christian life. That's the hard part of the walk in Christ. Yeah. Is daily releasing something so that the real thing has room to exist within you today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I think about that too. You're like, there's, it's a very American thing too, to be very results oriented. And so, that bleeds over into our faith sometimes where we're like, yeah, my faith is strong when things are going good. But when things are going bad, do I really believe that God's got me still?
Yeah.
Or do I think something's going on? Like I'm going to start, do I get a little apprehensive? Yeah. I think that's true of a lot of sin. Like I think a lot of sin is you're trying to figure out, you're not trusting fully. You're trying to figure out how to be loved in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're stumbling into what you think is real love, but it's not, or it's a counterfeit or whatever. Whereas if we really felt loved and accepted, you see that with families, broken families, like they're trying to make up for something their mom did or their dad did or whatever, and they make horrible choices. So if we believe that God is this abusive father like that, it can affect our entire walk with him.
Yeah.
If we don't believe that he's a supportive person who loves us and is counting, he's there for us, and we can count on him. We're likely to do destructive things.
Yeah. And the hard part is we can count on him, but he is not predictable. And I think that's where it's I had a talk with someone this week in sort of a, counseling situation about that. And we were sharing in both of our lives that the frustrations with God are even when he's done something once before, it doesn't guarantee that God shows up the same way every time. Mm-hmm. We see that with every major biblical figure, right? That the story would have been way less interesting if we would have written it, right?
Right.
It would be like, why would you, like, I constantly think about the children of Israel. Again, this is the dark side for me, everybody. It's like, I think about Joseph goes to Egypt, right? That's an amazing story. I really resonate a lot with the Joseph story. Mm-hmm. Like it speaks to me a lot. And I mean, the dude's in prison for all these years and all this stuff. So you can see God's faithfulness, but you also see his suffering that Joseph had to go through. And he saves everybody, basically. His brothers, half the world, because of the famine and the grains and all this stuff. But then it's like the story shifts, and 400 years later, the families are still there in slavery. And to me, this is the systems of it all.
Right.
Now, when they finally get delivered through Moses and they're out in the desert, the things that kept them from being able to trust in God were basically that they could never get Egypt out of them, right? They got out of Egypt. They could never get Egypt out of them.
Right.
And I go, but that wasn't really, but we didn't have to, you left them in Egypt for 400 years.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's the thing. They didn't want to come to Egypt. They came to Egypt because they were starving, and that was a part of the plan. So I don't know, God, your plan. Like, I don't know why that 400 years really got them, obviously, not only into slavery, but then, they were out of sync as, Abraham and his sons. They were out of sync with Isaac and with all the stuff at that point. So I don't know why that 400 years passes. I know that a day is like 1,000 years. I know, but that mystery to me is when I struggle, not just cognitively, but in all of our lives, the waiting, the suffering, right? That's the universal human reaction to it. But to believe God is good and that his plans, though I don't understand them, are for an ultimate good, of which will be good for me, but won't feel good for me necessarily right now at every time. That's the real faith, I think, is what now I'm saying. That's real faith.
Well, and you talk about them, like they were there for 400 years. So how do you get Egypt out of you? I think maybe our faith is informed by our pop culture. It's informed by the way we were raised. And like we grew up on the Brady Bunch where everything's back to good after 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So like an ancient faith where it might take 400 years for something to come to pass, a prophecy to be fulfilled or whatever. Like that's a beautiful history. But if you're in it, it feels like, where is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
we're still waiting for like the nice little bow at the end. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not. To me, I agree with you. You're saying like that. I think what the sentiment you're saying is like, that's what makes the stories a little more authentic, because you would never have written them that way.
Right.
Even like the standards that Jesus held people to. Like you go, this is part of what makes me think this is not a man-made thing, because I would have made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
someone who wants to gain a big following, even in the ancient world, right, would not say so many hard to understand, offensive things, right, that ever since people are struggling to follow, right? It'd be way easier to just say, hey, You be kind to your enemies,
Right, just
unless they go too far, and then you can
do your best. He would be like, "Hey, you've heard don't commit adultery. I'm saying if you think about a woman in your heart, in the wrong way, you've already committed adultery." They're like, "I wish you hadn't said that, Jesus." Like that's a new standard. That's a tough standard.
Yeah, if your disciples are Jesus' PR, they're going,
Can you print a retraction post haste?
We're not getting enough votes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But no, it's interesting. I like it, John. It's a good quote. John, let's do my segment this week. Johnny's old jokes. I found this from an article about, it was like top 10 jokes that are quasi profound, and I like stuff like that where there's a little bit of a lesson. Yeah. Because I think that's how I learned a lot in my life.
Didactic,
there's a little didactic, if you will. Sure. And I like that. So this is kind of a story one, but you may have heard it. But I loved it a lot. It says, an American businessman was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the fisherman on the quality of his fish, asked how long it took to catch them. The fisherman replied, it only took a little while. The American then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The fisherman said he'd had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, what do you do with the rest of your time? The fisherman said, I sleep late, I fish a little, I play with my children, take siesta with my wife, Maria, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life. The American scoffed, I'm a Wharton MBA and it can help you. You should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you'd have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you'd sell directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You'd control the product, processing, and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal village and move to Mexico City, then L.A., then eventually New York City, where you'd run your expanding enterprise. The fisherman asked, but how long will all this take? The American replied, about 15 or 20 years. But what then? The American laughed and said, well, that's the best part. When the time is right, you'd announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. The guy says, millions, then what? The American said, then you'd retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siesta with your wife, stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play your guitar with your friends.
Yeah.
That is like
perfect.
The best.
Yeah.
That's great. It's like, and I have to remind myself of this stuff, but it's one of those jokes that's very kind of powerful and pointed because you're like, yeah, if you get to the point where you have what you think you would have wanted when you were a kid, like there's a thing like know when you've caught your limit. Yeah. And there's this chase that we feel like we're slacking if we don't stay on the grind or whatever. And I always have to that's one thing a comedian does. You take something like my buddy Marty's a computer coder, and he was talking about politics the other day, and he said, when I see somebody saying something political or somebody having a political belief, I have to take what they're saying and code it out to what its extreme, like what's going to be the end of this. Yeah. And I can see, I don't like that. This is where this is headed. And that's what comedy is. We take it to this absurd length. But what that lets me do sometimes is be like, why do I want this? What do I think I want? Is this about people's approval? Yeah. I get this many followers and then I'll be a real boy to them. Yeah. And then once you realize it's that, you go, oh, I'm okay then. I don't need to do this. You know, if this is actually to make me happy or this is actually going to fulfill me in a way and I think this is my purpose, I'm going to go do this or take this show or go do this thing. But if everything becomes about the bottom line and grow, because if you're not growing, you're dying, that's just such a trap. Yeah. And it's a lie.
Yeah, it's a lie. You know, Andy Stanley had a thing years and years ago called the principle of the path. And it's that same thing. And that is, it's a very profound yet very simple thing. And that is that every road leads somewhere. Yeah. Even if you can't see around the corner, if it's, I'll say that sometimes, especially to kids. Like if you get on I-40 from here and you go east, whether you're walking on a bike or in a car, doesn't matter how long it takes. It could take weeks. It could take hours. You will eventually get to Knoxville. That's where I-40 East leads. Yeah. Like, so you're on a road. It's not like find a road. You're actually on one. And it's not a destination to nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I wonder where this goes. Like you could probably look and see, to your point, where this goes, and so you have to make sure that the road you're on is leading a place that you want it to go. Right. You may not know, what you want to do in life. I don't mean like that, but I mean like for the principles. Because I love what I think, by the way, that was on the wall. Something very similar to that was on a wall, like at a, it was printed up at like a Jimmy John's
seafood restaurant or something.
It was a sandwich shop. I remember because I took a picture of it.
Yeah,
because it was so profound to me. That it just affected me.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird, and I've done it to people before too, where I'm like, I see somebody, they're new in whatever art form. Maybe it was when we were in a band. Maybe it was when I started comedy. Whatever it is, you see somebody and they're very excited and you almost go like, bless their hearts. Yeah. You almost feel sorry for them the way that guy felt sorry for if they only knew, like they're not even, they need to be chasing this thing. If you're ever going to get anything out of it, you really got it. And you go, but they're happier than I am.
Yeah.
They're really in it. They're living in the moment. This is what I think I want. Like, you got to check yourself sometimes. I think it's weird the way I think social media has really done that to us, where we have to render a judgment and render a grade to people.
Right.
We have to have an opinion on every single thing, especially the things we're not knowledgeable about. We have to be like, well, thumbs up or thumbs down, like we're that emperor or something.
Yeah, it's very much like mass validation.
Yeah.
Like everything has to be validated.
Yeah.
And so
even people that don't ask it, they don't ask your advice. They go, hey, I've started doing this for a living. You go, that's great. That's good for you. Like,
you validate
they didn't ask for it. They're just telling you about you get to weigh in on it.
Yeah.
You can't just be happy for somebody. You've got to be like, I approve of this path that you're on.
It's funny. Yesterday I was on a phone call, and the person was being so kind, and it was about a project, and we're all very excited about the project. And the person said something to the effect of, I hope this launches your career in this genre of stuff.
Right.
And to hear someone say to a 45-year-old, I hope this launches your career, was a really interesting thing. Mm-hmm. And then they said, my only fear would be that it would take you away from pastoring because you would do this so much now.
Yeah.
And Jonnie, it's so funny hearing that as a 25-year-old versus a 45, I laughed. Like, right. I didn't contemplate as much. I laughed and I said, I can guarantee you something I've learned, and that is that God has a way of making sure that I'm going to do exactly what he wants me to do.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to be like, wow, God, if he wants me to pastor, I'll be doing that.
What am I going to do? John's a shooting star. He discovered this gift and he's off to the races.
And it was but they were so genuine about it, but it was like hey, it actually made me feel good about where I am a little bit to go, hey, I literally don't even contemplate things like that anymore. Like my life is not my own. Like I used to try to make it my own and worry and plan and try and do all this stuff. And it's like, it really is just a bunch of energy wasted. I'm just going to do the things that I have opportunity to do. And in the end, God will make sure, right, that my steps are where they need to be. Yeah. And I can almost guarantee you, though, he doesn't want me to be rich and famous. I can almost guarantee you. So.
Yeah, and you're probably, gosh, I don't know. I think, being rich and famous, I think it's not, because I used to think, there was an article written about this. Somebody said, I used to think that there were a lot of rich and famous people who were complete jerks. He didn't use the word jerks, but I'll censor it a bit. He said, but now I realize it's being rich and famous that makes you a jerk.
Nice.
He used to think like, why do all these rich and famous people, or
how do jerks become rich and famous?
It's like, how do they do it? He's like, oh, now that I've done it, and he had been famous, he was like, I realize it is a cancer. Uh-huh. It ruins your life.
Yeah.
And it's like the art that you want to make. We've quoted John Foreman before about that. He talks about like, he thinks of fame as this horrible byproduct. Maybe it was Mike Myers that said this. Fame is like a byproduct of the art that he's making. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to make something funny for this group of people, and then I'm going to make it, but there's this weird viscous offshoot from it that's awful and gross and has to be stored somewhere. Yeah. And he goes, that's fame. I have to now manage this. So I got to figure out what to do with it. Like it's nuclear waste. Mm-hmm. He goes, now when I go out in public, people are going to have assumptions about me. There's going to be photographers. I have to manage that part of it. But I did it to make this thing for this group of people because I was a kid playing in the sandbox and I wanted to build something for somebody.
Yeah.
So that's probably the right perspective.
Yeah.
But what instead is we have a whole generation chasing the nuclear waste.
Right. They're chasing the bad part.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
And then they go, when I get famous, I'll figure out what to do. I'll make something then. I'll sell perfume. I'll do something.
Yeah.
You know, no, I'm not dissing perfume people.
No.
If you have a nice idea for perfume,
Johnny
I'd love
Depp
to. I'd love
will
to
do
be.
your commercial.
I'd love to be endorsed. What kind of scent do you think I could?
It'd be musky, I'd say.
You think so?
It'd be,
John, it already is. Okay. Let's do This Week in History. We call it Talk About Then. John, we mentioned earlier, but this week, 1974, the year I was born. This is another one. It's like we were lost in the weeds as a country the year I was born.
Yeah.
And we figured it out.
The 70s is a little bit of a cluster for sure.
But this week, U.S. President Richard Nixon resigned. 4 days earlier, he had admitted his complicity in the Watergate cover-up. Vice President Gerald Ford is then appointed president, with Ford giving Nixon a full pardon the following month, which is wild to me still. This is the first and only time in U.S. history that someone became president without having been elected either president or vice president. Ford had become vice president soon after Spiro Agnew resigned, which we mentioned earlier as well. John, this week, 1975, another 70s debacle. I didn't know about this one. Singer Hank Williams Jr. fell 442 feet while climbing the Ajax Mountain in Montana. His injuries required reconstructive surgery to his face, and he had to relearn. He had to relearn to talk and sing. The accident happened a month after recording his breakthrough album, Hank Williams Jr. and Friends, that would be released later that year.
Huh.
He went through some stuff.
I didn't know
This guy.
that.
Yeah. Hank had to have his face reconstructed.
Wow.
Whew.
That would hurt.
Yeah. 400 and something feet.
I'm surprised he survived. That's 400 feet.
That's not. What do you think? You're saying that you think it's not the real Hank?
Wait.
So,
guys, you heard it
weird.
Here. I'm not saying, hey, listen, it's kind of like, I'll hear this.
The creation of the label.
I'm not saying that I believe this, guys, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. I want you to spread it.
That's right.
We'll all be surprised when people are confused.
John, this week, born Dan Bowden, 1936, American Hall of Fame athlete. He was the first American to run a 4-minute mile.
Huh.
1957, 3 minutes, 58.7 seconds. How fast can you run a mile? What's your fastest mile, John?
Oh, jeez.
You've done a 7-minute, haven't you? Let's just say for the people.
Sure.
Do you think you could do a 7? Like if I had you...
No.
Really?
I think, well, again, I ran 3 today.
Yeah.
But it was Clydesdale running. Like it was...
I think the fastest I ran, which was probably during the pandemic because I really got in running shape, I think I ran an 8:15.
Okay.
And again, I'm 200 pounds.
Yeah, if I ran in
I'm
the
over 200 pounds.
If I ran the 8s, I'd be pretty winded. But for 1 mile, though, I usually run more than 1.
Yeah, then you can go lay down.
Yeah, right.
Immediately.
I'll see you next week. Yeah.
These Olympic athletes, man, when they run and they get through, like they've been training for 4 years for this moment.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
That moment of like, even if you lose, you win, it's over. Like the training season is over.
Yeah.
My buddy worked the 96 Olympics. He was in sports management. That was his major. And he worked for this, what was it called? Not Knoxville. It's like some sports corporation. And they were part of the Olympics. They worked in the Olympic Village in 96 in Atlanta. And he said it's wild when they finish their event.
Oh, I can't imagine.
The partying, because they've eaten no sweets and it's all dedication to this thing.
Yeah.
This moment. And win or lose, now it's like, you find me a soft pretzel and somebody of the opposite sex.
I was gonna say,
and
yeah.
it's wild. So
Yeah.
it's crazy in the Olympic Village. But he was saying like it was such a strange environment. He was like part of the people that he would golf cart people back and forth to their events and stuff.
Yeah.
So he had all these, not famous, but they're in their country they are.
Yeah.
So, okay, John, Smokey Bear, 1944, August 9th, the first Smokey Bear poster debuted. Which I think we call him Smokey the Bear, but I guess he's just Smokey Bear.
I don't know.
Is it Smokey the Bear? Okay, it doesn't matter. Because of this, August 9th is used as Smokey's birthday. The poster used the slogan, "Care will prevent 9 out of 10 forest fires." Which that's kind of a working. It's a rough draft.
He was just born. You know what I'm saying?
Care will prevent 9 out of 10 forest fires. Kids, I don't know.
Yeah.
In 1950, a bear cub was rescued from a New Mexico wildfire and became the live embodiment of the cartoon Smokey Bear. The slogan eventually became, John,
only you can prevent forest fires.
only you can prevent wildfires.
Oh, is that what they said?
Yeah.
Wildfires, okay.
Yeah.
Forest fires is what I heard growing up.
Yeah. I remember, you're right.
Yeah.
but this evidently wildfires.
And it's interesting, too, because wildfires are spreading like wildfires.
They are.
I mean, like...
It's a lot of them.
And the theory of the fact that we prevented so many now causes bigger ones. Because forests are actually designed to go through a cycle of burning.
Right. You're supposed to like do this. The forest floors have to be maintained because all that loose kindling on the...
I wonder if we just burn down our houses every 10 years. You know what I'm saying? If that would...
Well, now you're going to be a suspect. If your house suddenly goes up, and we're like, John mentioned it on the podcast.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not worried about anybody from the insurance company coming to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But guys, if you're here, go be a patron. Wouldn't that be...
Yeah, how would you become a patron, John?
Well, you go to talkaboutthatpodcast.com.
Oh, cool. And you go and there's click the upper right-hand link. You click on that. If you want to send us a note, there's a little voice bubble at the bottom. Or you could just send an email to hello at talkaboutthatpodcast.com.
Yeah.
John, this week, finally, 1936.
Okay.
This was the Hitler Olympics, where Hitler was in the Olympic, he was in the...
Well, he wasn't in the Olympics.
He was in the... No. He was in the stadium, though, overseeing it, what he thought was going to be this big, vanquishment of like, this is going to show the white races, whatever. So it was a big moment because, as we know, the Black American track star Jesse Owens, he upset Adolf Hitler's theory of Aryan superiority by winning his 4th gold medal this week, 1936, for the 4x100 meter relay race. 4 gold medals he won. So that had to tick Hitler off.
Nazi Germany Olympics is a really fascinating topic to me. Like that, and understand that Nazi Germany existed throughout the entire 30s, basically, especially mid to late. We don't think of Nazi Germany as the war, but the reason there was a war is Nazi Germany was allowed to arm, and mobilize for basically half a decade or more,
right?
With no checks and balances, right? Was the theory of appeasement that we were trying to prevent another war by not doing enough, and then too much appeasement allowed him to.
Right.
It's just fascinating, though. I mean, like you're in the Nazi basically just war machine. Imagine, because it's Olympics. I mean. We're watching it now. Imagine Hitler standing there. And Hitler was already a bad guy. I mean, now he was Time Magazine's Man of the Year in the 30s. That's crazy. But
yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. They ain't all kinds of people Man of the Year.
Right. It could just mean his significance, right? But people knew he was a significant guy.
I could be Man of the Year.
Well,
it's probably a stretch.
It would be. I'll submit your name.
Thank you.
They're always asking me.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you want this year, John? I'm like, well...
I want to be people's sexiest Man of the Year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's time.
Yeah. Well,
I've had a heck of a glow up.
You're the right age for it.
Right?
I mean, yeah.
I'm Paul Rudd's age.
How
he
old
won
is
it.
Ryan Reynolds? Is he?
I don't know. I think he's younger than me.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very handsome.
I don't know.
It's upsetting.
He's funny, too.
I know.
Yeah. He's
talented.
Yeah. He's got all of it.
Yeah, forget it. Seems like a good dude too.
Yeah, people like him.
Plus, he's got all these companies like Mint Mobile, and it's like he's trying to help people have smaller cell phone bills. They're not a sponsor even. It's still like I just go, what an interesting thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
I want to be that. Listen, if I was a billionaire, I think I'd like to think that I'd give a little back.
Yeah,
like Mark Cuban is doing this thing for like prescription drugs.
Yeah,
it's like. That's what billionaires are supposed to be doing. Why don't we have more billionaires doing stuff like that? And I know Bill Gates has given away his entire fortune. I get it. But I'm saying, like, there's a lot of creepy billionaires out there doing there's a lot of ne'er-do-wells. And I want to be one of those for like a few years.
Yeah.
And then come around and
see
be like...
the error of my ways.
Right. Yeah. I want to have like a moment, like a Scrooge moment where I'm like, what? I get haunted.
Yes. Maybe I could be one of the ghosts.
And then you go, oh no, I've wasted my life. It's not too late. And then I realize it's not too late. I start giving it all away. I buy the biggest goose in the window.
Yeah.
But first, I get to have a little fun with all the money.
God bless us all, everyone. And I mean, it would be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my dream. And the patrons can get us there.
Yeah, they can. Guys,
we're only $1 billion away.
We're close. We're moving in on we're very round numbers.
Yes, thank you.
Now.
Thank you to our patrons.
Yeah, thank you guys for all that you do. Thanks for everyone who sends emails and comments and encouragements. We do get a lot of encouragements.
We do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys are encouraging this. You know that. So that's why it keeps happening.
Yeah.
So, but hey, keep it coming, and go check out JonnieW.com for his latest tour dates, because You told me today at lunch, like, you're going to be gone every weekend, but what, one or something for the rest of the year? I mean,
we just dropped the poster today for, I just got the link, but I didn't know all the people that were on it, but I'm doing a music festival in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania with like Skillet and Lecrae and Switchfoot and all these people. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun one. Come to that. It's called Uprise Festival. You can get tickets on my website.
It's in Striper.
Striper.
Yeah.
They're out there doing it.
Come on.
He's still hitting those high notes.
Yeah.
I could.
And you could too, Johnny. That's not, but full circle.
Okay.
We're bringing the band back.
Yes.
We should do one song.
That could be part of the deal. Yeah, I'll do my dumb jokes, but you got to let me live out my...
Let's write one song.
Yes.
And we have producer friends everywhere, right? We'll get it recorded.
Right.
And let's see, because you only put out singles anyway now.
Right.
And let's put out a single. Let's put out a Scarlet Thread single.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
Like a dance pop kind of a thing? That's what I'm feeling?
Well, yeah, I did write a dance pop kind of worship song thing that one time.
Yeah.
Remember that Mercy song?
I do. How'd that go?
It was great. I love that song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Never mind.
Had our guys sang it and did it, and it sounded amazing. Gomez produced it. It was really good.
That's right. I do remember that now.
Kind of had that, and I can't, I was like, make it sound young, Gomez.
Don't lose that feel. Yeah. That's great. Well, okay, well, I'll submit it and we'll see what happens. But if you don't hear from me, maybe in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania without you.
Don't call. We'll call you.
If you see a photo of me hanging out with Lecrae, just know that it did not work out.
Right.
And I've long since left you, and now I've got a career in hip-hop, a thriving hip-hop career.
Well, I'm not surprised.
And then we'll have a beef and we'll write poetry about each other.
Yes, we can write.
Retreat to our separate quarters.
Right.
And just have it out.
You be Drake. Yeah. I'll be Kendrick Lamar.
Done.
And, I mean, it's going to be a little less profanity, probably. Just a skosh. Yeah. Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on
Talk About That.